Thank you, Mr. Lovins, for that fantastic message. My name is Jeff Ramsdell. I'm a professor here at Appalachian State and the director of the Appalachian Energy Center. And I am on the organization committee for this Appalachian Energy Summit, and proud to be part of that. And this year we decided that we would try to do something interesting, and instead of just accepting questions from the audience, which we will do, I'll get to that part, to moderate a discussion between President Ross and Amory Lovins to get a little bit more understanding about where we can go from here. Now, so we had this discussion, I'd say months ago, that we were going to do this. And of course, at the time, I had no idea who would be the moderator until, I don't know, a few days ago. And Jed Moody said, I think you should do it, Jeff. And so there I was thinking, okay, let me think. Moderating for two of my heroes, and one is my boss's 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 boss. Risk, return. What the heck? We'll take the risk. As Amory told us, we need to take some risks to make this thing happen. And so I want you to be involved in this discussion, so please participate. Now, since I'm the moderator, I get to ask the first few questions, though. So I'll start with President Ross. You've given us some great insight into some of the successes that we've made across the UNC system and private universities within North Carolina, and we're very proud of those. But you also talked about some of the challenges and barriers, some specific to our state, but some that many other states are facing as well. And Amory, as always, you've given us this fantastic vision of what we can be, and inspires us all again, and reminds us, both of you did, remind us that we need to listen to our students, which we certainly appreciate. But I'd like to try to start a discussion on how do we reconcile the gap between this more pragmatic, where we are and what our barriers are, and this great vision of what we all want to achieve. We want to get there aggressively. How do we start?
Well, I think, first of all, I thank Amory for painting a really fantastic vision for the future of the university, and I think we're on the path. The question is, how can we get there faster, and how can we learn from each other? And one of the pieces of tonight's discussion that struck me was the importance of integration. And so I think about that at the system level of how can we integrate what we're doing across our campuses much better than we're doing now. Because there are great things going on here that are not happening at other campuses. There are things happening at our other campuses that aren't going on here. And we need to figure out how to make that process of communication work better. The second thing I would say is that it isn't so much about the barriers, because we have them. We have barriers around capital. We have barriers around regulation. We're always going to have barriers of one kind or another. I think the success comes when you figure out together how to get around those, how to take advantage of our strengths and how to be creative and innovative, and how to learn from partners and people outside of the university that can help us do things better. So the bottom line is, I'd say turn it over to the students and it'd be done pretty quick.
Yeah, you spoke. Perfect. Perfect timing, whoever pulled that off.
Yeah, Gifford and Libba Pinchot say that brains are evenly distributed, one per person. And you mentioned 50,000 faculty and staff and 220,000 students. Right. So where are most of the brains? Let's use them.
Fantastic. And both of you have hit on this a little bit, but I want to go there a little bit further about what is unique about our situation as a university. Of course, we're all interested, everybody here today and participating in the summit, interested in energy conservation and renewable energy applications and how we pull those off. And we certainly are interested in utilizing our resources as efficiently as possible. But what makes the university, and I use that term broadly, unique as far as opportunities and even obligations compared to other industries, other businesses?
Well, there are lots of things that make us different, but I think one is, most industries are focused on the mission of that particular enterprise. And they have a bottom line that they're trying to satisfy. And certainly for for-profit enterprises, they're looking at meeting the shareholders' expectations, and they're focused on a particular niche of business. We don't have a bottom line. We have lots of different bottom lines at the university, first of all. Secondly, we're not, as Amory so wonderfully pointed out, we're not about just one specific enterprise. We're too much, and he's right, too much restricted by the various activities and fields of study that we find on our campuses. And we do have to break down those barriers, and I think we're making progress in that regard. When I think about where universities were even 10 years ago, there wasn't near as much interdisciplinary activity and study as is taking place now. But we still need to unleash much more of that and to encourage faculty and students to work across boundaries and to work with each other more. I say oftentimes what we are trying to do is develop T people, and that is people who know a lot about or little about a lot of things. They have a strong liberal arts education, and we appreciate in North Carolina you're making the case for the liberal arts, I'll tell you. So we need students that have that breadth, but we also need the depth. They need to understand what it means to go deep, to really understand a subject. They don't have to know that about everything, but they got to understand how to get there so that when the problem arises, they know how to go about finding solutions. So, we're about not just making money, although we'd like to make a little on some of our things that we do. We're not about just saving money, though we need to do that. We're not just about research and about teaching. We're about changing lives. We're about changing the lives of faculty because they get the privilege and the blessing of interacting with our students. It's about changing the lives of students because they get to interact with each other and with the faculty and with the staff. I've seen staff change lives just as much as faculty sometimes. So universities are a unique community within themselves, which should foster and encourage life-changing enterprises across disciplines and provide people with an ability to step back and be creative and innovative and take risks at a time in their life where they may not have it in the future. So we are really different, and we're really an asset to, I think, our society. It's been questioned lately just how much of an asset we are, and I think we have to reestablish ourselves by taking leadership on key issues, and this is one of them. It's a long answer, but nobody wants to go out right now because it is raining out there. So.
Mr. Lovins, do you have any follow-up with that?
I think Anthony Cortez is going to talk about this at 9 in the morning, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but I think the basic point I heard him make over lunch today is absolutely on target. To do sustainable green stuff, don't think about sustainable and green. Think about the fundamental mission of the institution, because that is a vital part of it. If we are teaching people how to destroy the planet more efficiently and how to put everybody out of business forever, we're not doing a very good job as educators. And I think he'll put it a lot better than that tomorrow.
Okay. President Ross, I was interested, you spoke about the strategic plan and that energy-related research, education, and outreach is part of that plan and part of our mission, and making discoveries that fuel our state. And of course, Amory, you talked about the innovation within a university, and I love the beginner's mind. I've definitely had that and lost that in certain places and hope to gain it back. But I'm wondering if we look at the research that happens within the university and we think about the infrastructure that many of us here are working on, conserving energy and applying renewable technologies and things like that, and integrative design, how do we take advantage of the research that's happening within the universities, sometimes at a very fundamental level, that, eventually will come back to us 30 years later after it goes to applied and tech transfer, and then some company picks it up and comes back and sells it to our physical plant. How do we integrate that from the beginning? How do we get the academic side of the house and the physical business affairs side of the house to interact more effectively at those fundamental levels?
Before I got here, the Board of Governors passed a new policy that required a sustainability director on every campus. And I think part of the goal of that, when we had one at my previous institution, and I think the goal, every time you talk about what that individual or that office should be doing on a campus, is exactly that work of pulling people together. And I wouldn't leave out the academic side of the house, because what really needs to happen is not just integration between research and operations, but it needs to all be about a learning opportunity.
Right.
And so part of what we hope will happen under the strategic plan is that we will use our expertise not only to improve ourselves, but to improve our communities. Because we have an obligation as the public university, we have an obligation to the people of the state. And part of the way we serve the people is to take our expertise and our ability and infuse it into communities. And so whether you're talking about designing smart communities, or whether you're talking about integrated design of buildings, or whether you're talking about new ways to think about transportation, universities, we have some talent there, and we need to share that with the community, but we also need to involve our students in the development of that, because I think it's a great learning opportunity for them. And they won't let it take 30 years to find its way back to us. They'll be the ones that are thinking of, well, gee, we could do this now. And
Include
oftentimes
them
they're
as
right.
a business partner, for instance.
Right.
Even okay.
Well, it makes me wonder whether when a new technique is being developed somewhere in the university system, the developer shouldn't think of the system itself and the facilities people in conjunction with staff and with students and faculty as being a potential beta market for it, provided that risk can be intelligently managed.
Fantastic.
It's one of those places where regulations get in the way sometimes, but again, I think there are ways around that. You just have to be creative and thoughtful about how we do it.
Great. Okay, I'd like to ask for some questions from the audience. I think we have some microphones available out there, but please don't be shy. What other questions do you have for Mr. Lovins and President Ross?
Can't hear you.
Is it on?
Yes. Yes, it rots in what Robert Frost calls the slow, smokeless burning of decay, and it will either oxidize or worse, turn into methane.
Yes, it seems to me that there's somewhat of a bias against this primordial renewable resource that occurs among even our conservationists. And I wondered if you could address the role of biomass as and the thermal load on our energy budget, which biomass is particularly suited for.
Well, the majority of our total end-use energy needs are for heat, mainly at low temperatures, and meeting that need with very high-quality, expensive forms of energy like electricity is thermodynamically inelegant and economically inefficient. There was an architect long ago who said it's like cutting butter with a chainsaw. That said, there are a lot of ways to get low temperature heat. I grow bananas in the Rockies without a heating system just by using super insulating glass. We're on crop 47 right now. At 7,100 feet in the Rockies, where it used to go to minus 47 F with no furnace. So we're doing pretty well just with passive solar. The part that my short and slightly flippant initial answer left out, of course, is that the tree that falls in the forest is not simply a passive object, it is the basis of a complex ecosystem. I don't know the stages of how a tree rots in your forest, but I know Chris Mazur's work in the Pacific Northwest in books like The Invisible Forest showed that that bole of the tree rots with something like, I think it was 15 or 20 ensembles of organisms that successively decompose it. So if you take the tree out of the woods, you've just lost the habitat for those organisms, and after a while, the nutrients are not recycled and you no longer have baby trees. So this is not just about massive carbon and nitrogen and oxygen, it's about habitat, ecosystem. It's not just about fuel, it's about a very intricate web of relationships between living things. So to get to your broader question about biomass, there are some kinds of biofuel that probably make good sense, but if we have very efficient vehicles, as we showed in the book Reinventing Fire, you could have a much more mobile economy burning no oil and needing so little advanced biofuel, only 3 million barrels a day, that you could get 2/3 of it from waste, and to produce all of it, you would need no cropland, and you need not damage soil or climate. I am nervous about some of the large-scale biofuel operations, I should say biomass operations, growing up in the southeast like wood chips for fuel, because I don't think that's likely to give us healthy forests.
I've noticed that there's millions of tons of biomass waste being generated throughout our nation, especially now with the advent of these highly active weather cells and superstorms. And if you look, I just want to pique everybody's attention to the mountains of mulch that are being used right now. It's about the only industry that is growing in that area that is very obvious. So I think we do have a responsibility to use the biomass for its highest function, and we have a responsibility to plant replacement trees and to keep the system self-sustaining for future generations. And to do that, we got to raise the bar a little bit on how we're using the biomass waste that occurs. Thank you.
Thanks.